Buying an acreage in Alberta can be incredible, but it's the things you don't see that can end up costing you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
In this video, we're going to break down wells and septics, zoning rules you need to know for your future, and we're going to make sure you have all the financing details before you jump into that acreage purchase.
So one of the things that's really important when you're buying an acreage is obviously the land use and the zoning. It's important to understand what you're buying and also what your future plans are for that property, because in Alberta, different zoning can mean different structures that can be built, different animals and types of animals, and also quantities of animals that you can have on your property. So as part of your due diligence when you're buying an acreage, you want to verify with the county, whether it's Rocky View, Foothills, Mountain View, whatever the county is, what the specific zoning is for the parcel that you're trying to buy or the acreage that you're trying to buy. And then by going through the county as well, you can ask them, hey, I plan on having 4 horses. Does this land and this acreage equipped to handle 4 horses? I think usually it's 2 acres per horse in certain places, but I know it can vary.
Yeah, and you usually have to have a minimum of 4 to start.
Right.
To be able to have horses on there. But yeah, I mean, of all the small animals, really it comes down to animal units and how many you're allowed per acre of land. So if you can look that up, then you can, in each county bylaw, they'll have how many animals of each type equate 1 animal unit.
Yes.
So you have 20 chickens for 1 animal unit, for
right.
example.
Yeah. So if I had 3 animal units, I could have 60 chickens if 1 unit equals 20 chickens. Yeah. Okay.
And then I think one thing people have to keep in mind too, so on top of the county restrictions, is make sure you're checking the title. Your agent should be pulling title ahead of offering on properties, because a lot of these titles have restrictive covenants on them that supersede kind of the county regulations.
Yeah.
So a lot of the land, if it's been chopped up into 20, 40 acre, that kind of thing, stripped, a lot of those will have restrictions on them by the original landowner.
Yeah.
And sometimes those will restrict animals, uses, what you can build on there as well too. So that can also be on title on top of county restrictions.
Yeah, very good point. The 2 most common types of zoning that you're going to see when you're buying an acreage is going to be either AG, agricultural, or C-res, which is country residential. Typically, when you're buying a property that's country residential, it would be treated the same as pretty much any other house. With agricultural, there could be GST on the purchase, so that's something that you need to be aware of, and make sure that's part of your due diligence and talking to your accountant to see if GST is applicable. Also on ag, depending on the property, sometimes lenders are going to require more money down. Quick interruption, we want to keep bringing you real estate value every single week, and 60% of our audience is not subscribed. So if you could take a moment and hit that subscribe button, we would be super, super grateful, and we will keep bringing new heat every week. Next on the list, we want to cover water and septic systems. Typically, when you're in a residential neighborhood in Calgary or surrounding areas, you're hooked up to municipal water and municipal sewers. So you flush the toilet, you drink water, you don't have to think about it. When you're buying an acreage, it's a little bit different.
I mean, especially wells and septic can cost you a lot of money if there's problems with them. So first and foremost is something you want to investigate thoroughly when you're purchasing a property. So make sure your inspector is looking at septics, well, usually bring somebody in to test the wells also, and the water quality is key here too. So I've seen people try to skip some of these steps and save money on inspections. It's not worth it. You want to make sure both your septic and your well are in good operating condition and are going to last for a while. So right now we're seeing replacement costs on standard septics around $40,000 with excavation. So that's going to price you out. And then to drill a well, you're at least $100 every foot. So that is going to cost you a lot of money. If you need to drill a new well or go deeper, for example, you didn't have the water pressure you're looking for. So I think water quality, first and foremost, is probably on people's minds. A lot of hard water in Alberta, and especially in the Calgary area. So that could be an issue with clogging up pipes, leaving, iron residue, that kind of thing on your pipes and plumbing. So it can wear it down over time. So understanding where your composition of your water is. But then bacteria is a big one. So a lot of people focus on like, okay, well, this is safe to drink, but there's actually certain bacteria that are safe to drink, but can cause problems for your house. Iron-eating bacteria is common in the Calgary area. And so that bacteria, if you had a high iron content in your well to begin with, the bacteria can't move in because they eat the iron. Unfortunately, the residue that they produce from eating the iron basically acts like iron.
Right.
So it can wear down your pipes, it can leave brown, copper residue, kind of that coloring, discolor things, it can clog things up, it can really affect your appliances. The dishwasher we took over our house was completely caked in iron residue on the bottom where the jets come out. So it can really do a lot of damage to your house, and a lot of people don't think about that. So make sure you get a thorough water test done before you purchase the property, and talk to a water expert, and we'll drop some good ones in the comments to go through that and say, hey, what are the things I'm going to run into down the road.
Some stuff that I've seen, like average household family, you should be looking around 3 gallons per minute minimum.
Bare minimum.
And that's like bare minimum. So when you're looking at these well reports, it will show the depth of the well, so they know where they found water. It's going to show the composition of the rock or the shale or whatever is in there too. And then also the gallons per minute. So that's how many gallons is pumping out of this well per minute feeding into the house. Something that you could run into is also a cistern, right?
Yep.
So if we're seeing wells that are more low efficiency wells, maybe it's 2 gallons per minute. I've even seen 1.5 gallons per minute, which is really low. There can be a cistern either in the house in the mechanical room. There can be an underground cistern. And essentially, there's a pump that feeds water from that well. It gets stored into the cistern so that you have a holding tank of water, and that cistern then feeds the house. So that is a workaround for low producing wells. It does work fine. There's a lot of people that live on low producing wells, but you know, if you can get a good producing well, that's just going to save you a lot of effort, and it's nice to have.
Yeah, and keep in mind cisterns take up a lot of space.
Yeah.
So if you don't have an indoor space to have that cistern in there, then you can't really rely on that. If you had a big shop right close to the house, or you have a huge space in your basement, I've seen some really big ones in basements, but they take up a lot of space. So that is a good way to bump your gallons per minute up. I'd look for 6, 7 and up when you can. Even at 6, like 2 people can't shower at the same time.
Yeah.
So if you have children, if you have preteens, teens, like 6 people in the house, and you're worried about being able to have 2 people shower at the same time, you really want to see double digits, or plan to maybe drill a new well to get those double digits, but never, it's not a for sure if you do that.
What about some types of septic systems? So we have what's called a tank and field. So the sediment and the crap from the house goes into a tank, and then it gets dispersed to a field somewhere on the property. Yep. Usually, if it's nice outside, the way to find that is you're looking for green vegetation around the area, because obviously there's lots of nutrients and stuff in our shit, and you'll be able to see a big green area, and typically that's where that tank and field is found. Depending on your family size, you may need to pump out your septic every 3 months, every 6 months, every year. It totally depends, but some, I've had husband and wife, no kids, no nothing, and they only have to do it once a year. So obviously depends on usage. What's cost for something like that to pump out your septic?
Pump out like $500 or $600 every time you pump it out.
Okay.
So
something to consider as additional maintenance that you would not have to do if you were living in Calgary or Cochrane or wherever.
And yeah, a lot of people like the Acreage because they don't have those sewer and water bills.
Correct.
But yes, there's maintenance required with your pump and your well, and there's maintenance required to pump out the septic, which is at least once a year, let's call it, with the family. So those costs come back on.
Yeah.
They're just spread out differently. But yeah, your septic tank and field is going to be your most common. There are some old school ones like mounds and stuff that you really want to get into, but if you're in places that don't have very big population, haven't seen big turnover, you might see some of the older systems, and you might want to budget to replace that. Finding the septic field, there are satellite pictures available. You can go back and look at properties with Google and see, you can kind of identify where those fields are, like you said. And same thing with wells. There's a well database for Alberta. Every well drilled after 1970 should technically be in there. Sometimes drillers don't report their drills, especially if they're smaller. There's going to be some missing, but a lot of them are in there. So that's a quick way to check ahead of time and at least have the gallons per minute, flow rate, and depth at time of drilling, which could be 20, 30 years before. So it might not be reliable as far as flow rate anymore, but at least you can get an idea of what the flow rate was back when it was drilled and save you some money ahead of time.
The next thing we want to talk about is when you go and view acreages and things are not as they might seem. Some of the workmanship might look different from when you're walking into a new build in town, or you see a big renovation with acreage product and rural stuff. Sometimes there's a handyman that have done repairs and maintenance and stuff over the years. So that's just something that you want to be aware of. It can also become very expensive if you don't know what you're getting into.
Yeah, so it's a big problem in just in acreages in general in this province, and I'm sure across Canada. But a lot of people do the work themselves anytime something comes up, and it's not really done to code. In our case, we purchased a house that was actually built by the original homeowner himself or finished themselves. So even from the start, I don't think it was built very well. And then when we pulled back walls, we found electrical lines taped together, multiple spots, even 220 volt ones.
Wow.
For ovens and stoves and everything, just taped together in the middle of the wall. So huge fire hazards.
What about the pests?
Yeah. Mouse infested houses are definitely something you might find in the country, especially if they haven't been used or haven't been maintained properly. Pests do like to move in. A lot of people will have cats, but if there weren't cats on the property for years at a time, I definitely would investigate mouse infestation.
Yeah.
And they will destroy your drywall. The mice will take all of your insulation and make nests out of it. So all of a sudden you have big gaps for your hot and cold air and everything in the house too. So if you're not planning to renovate your entire house, you should definitely investigate as well as possible for infestations, for plumbing issues, for electrical issues. Look up permits. They are available to public. So if stuff wasn't done with a permit, then again, investigate even more and really scrutinize the electrical and plumbing and internal systems.
And while you're identifying the land use in the first point that we talked about, figuring out the zoning and, you know, how many animals you can have and that kind of thing, that's a great time to also talk to the county and ask them for any permits that are on file for that particular house. You can pull the building permit, the electrical, the plumbing.
Yep.
It's all public information, and that's stuff that you need to know. And it still could happen. I think that's fair to say. Even if you go and do all the due diligence, there are always some inherent risk with anything. So just keep that in mind.
If the house isn't larger, the property's large, obviously. So there's a lot of factors taken, a lot of money needs to be spent to maintain these properties too. Inherently, that's a problem. As a lot of people buy these properties, don't understand the work that needs to go into them just for regular maintenance. They can't keep up. They try to do things themselves, but they miss things or do it the wrong way, and it just leads to more problems down the road.
Yeah, for sure. The last thing we want to cover is financing on acreages. So some people think that it's the exact same as just buying a residential house, and it's not. So again, one way to identify, we talked about the land use. So we want to identify if this is a country residential property or if it's agricultural. Typically with a country residential property, there's lots of lenders that will look at that with minimum down 5%, 10%. You know, we've seen lots of insured mortgages for country residential properties. One thing to keep in mind though with the lenders is most of them are only going to give you financing based on the value of the home and 10 acres. So if you're looking at a home with paddocks and outbuildings and a shop and it's 25 acres, well, that could really alter your down payment amount because they're not looking at the full picture.
Yeah, so if you're looking at a property that's bigger than 10 acres or has multiple outbuildings that you want in the appraised value, firstly, you can go to ATB or Service. They will lend you on more land and they will lend to you on at least one outbuilding. So it really just depends how much debt you need to cover that property. So if you're purchasing a property at 25 acres and it's got a house and it's got a large barn on it and you're buying it for $2 million, a regular residential mortgage is only going to say the property's only worth 1.5, let's say, then you're probably going to want to go to ATB. They can lend on up to a quarter section, 160 acres, your house, and at least one outbuilding.
Nice.
So they can at least incorporate all the value of the land you've bought, so that might help you on the mortgage side of things. Once you get into larger things, or if you want, let's say, all of your outbuildings covered and equipment, that kind of thing, then you're going to get into the farm lenders and the farm mortgages.
Yeah,
which
farm credit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Which will change your down payment structure for sure. And then borrowing rates will be different than the residential side. So you'll want to get at least a couple quotes on that side too from your broker. Or if your broker doesn't service farm, then you're going to be dealing with them directly.
I think one more thing to touch on the financing side is if you're buying an operating business, like we're talking maybe a cattle ranch or a full equestrian setup, you know, that stuff could require a business plan from one of these lenders like Farm Credit, because they're going to be lending on the value of the land and the asset, but also the business that's incorporated there. So if you are looking to make a big purchase like that, we definitely service those clients as well. But something to keep in mind as far as financing and having a business plan so that the lender can see that. It makes underwriting much quicker.
Now, one thing Riley mentioned at the beginning too was GST. We have had properties that have been split, so a certain amount of the property has GST applicable and some of the property wasn't, depending on how business was being run on the property. So make sure you have that discussion with your mortgage broker, lawyer, and accountant. Overall, just say, is GST applicable on any of this purchase? Because that can significantly change the purchase price, obviously.
After watching this video, you should be armed with all of the tools and resources so that you can make an informed decision on your next acreage or agricultural purchase. All of our contact info is in the description, so if you're a buyer or a seller looking at acreage properties, we would love to service you. Send us an email, send us a text, and we'd love to help.